Did you know that up until 1988, Disney didn't actually own the Disneyland Hotel? And that Disney's plan to buy it ultimately led to the creation of Tokyo DisneySea? Strange path from A to Z, right? When Walt Disney built Disneyland, he put everything on the line to make his dream a reality. At $17 million, he had exhausted every option, including putting up some of his own money to pay for the project. As a result, he wasn't able to afford to build a hotel to go along with the theme park, so instead he turned to outside friends to build and own one. He initially turned to his friend and television personality Art Linkletter, but fearing that Disneyland wouldn't be successful, Linkletter declined. As a second choice, Walt pitched the idea to oil tycoon turned film producer Jack Rather. Beyond an oil company and real estate, Rather owned the rights to such classic shows as The Lone Ranger and Lassie. In return for building the hotel, Disney would grant Rather a 99-year exclusive license to build hotels in Southern California using the Disney name. Rather jumped at the opportunity, and by October of 1955, just 3 months after Disneyland opened to the public, the Disneyland Hotel was open for business. Everything worked out pretty well, and in 1961, as an extension of the goodwill deal, Disney would lease the use of the Disneyland Monorail at little cost to Rather, with a new station being built so that guests of the Disneyland Hotel could easily take the monorail to Disneyland. Over the following 30 years, the hotel would both grow and fade. Expanding to 3 main buildings, the hotel eventually totaled at 1,174 rooms. However, over time, the quality of the hotel itself slipped and it began to appear a bit run down. Beyond that, Rather's company, Rather Corp, fell into financial trouble, and in the mid-1980s, a company called Industrial Equity, based in Hong Kong and run by a New Zealand raider named Ronald Brearley, purchased 28% of Rather Corp and informed the SEC that they had intentions to buy at least half of the company, which usually meant that the ultimate goal was a full takeover down the line. Meanwhile, Disney was anxious to regain their name rights for hotels in the Southern California region. They realized that even though they didn't own or operate the Disneyland Hotel, guests would associate the poor quality of the experience with them anyway. With the New Zealand corporate raider setting his sights on the company, however, they understood that any hostile takeover would only diminish their chances of cutting a deal. So Disney executives Gary Wilson and Richard Nanula were tasked with finding a solution. Instead of cutting off Industrial Equity, Disney proposed that they buy Rather Corp with Industrial Equity. With the agreement, Disney and Industrial Equity would pay $152 million for the rest of the company, with Disney paying $76 million of that to own half of it. Disney would own the Disneyland Hotel, regain their name rights, get the 26 acres of land south of Disneyland, and also get 300 acres worth of real estate in Long Beach, California. Industrial Equity would get everything else, including the real estate and the oil business. In order to get Rather Corp to bring down the price to that $152 million, Disney did a bit of strong-arming. Remember how earlier I mentioned that Walt leased the use of the monorail for the Disneyland Hotel for a low price to Rather? Well, that lease was about to be up for renewal, and Disney used that to their advantage. Disney threatened to spike up the cost of the renewal if Rather Corp tried to sell themselves to anyone besides Disney and Industrial Equity. The monorail was crucial to the hotel's value, and a spike in the lease would bring down the value of the hotel as well as the company as a whole. The tactic worked, and in 1988, after the purchase was complete, Disney owned the Disneyland Hotel for the first time. More importantly, they now had the rights to use the Disney name in any future hotels they built in Southern California, which would ultimately come in handy when they'd later build Disney's Grand California Hotel and Spa and Disney's Paradise Pier Hotel. Just a few months later, after fully analyzing the worth of the company, Disney went ahead and bought out Industrial Equity's half of the company for $85.2 million. Disney would sell off the gas and oil properties to offset the cost and keep what they had originally aimed to acquire. They also committed to spending $35 million on upgrading and improving the Disneyland Hotel. As for the additional land in Long Beach, Disney would eventually create plans for an area called Port Disney a few years later. It would include a shopping district, a cruise ship port, and a seaside theme park called DisneySea. Ultimately, the project would get canceled. Beyond local resistance from Long Beach residents, Disney was feeling the financial pressure of Euro Disney. On top of that, with their sights set on a second gate over at Disneyland, DisneySea took the back seat to plans for a West Coast Epcot called Westcott. A good topic for another video. However, most good canceled ideas at Disney find life elsewhere, and years later, the theme park idea would find a new home at Japan's second Disney theme park, Tokyo DisneySea, which would open in 2001. The award-winning park is enjoyed by over 13 million guests annually, so I guess in a weird way, it was a good thing Walt Disney didn't own the Disneyland Hotel.